Okay, so Florida loses to Kentucky. I mean, one of the most unbelievable scores I've seen in a long time. 38 to 7. 38 to 7. And Kentucky's won some games over Florida. They won some games over Napier. They won some games over Dan Mullen. The record was certainly not as good against Steve Spurrier or Urban Meyer, but you know, Mark Stoops might have saved his job. He beat Auburn 10-3 last week, beat Florida 38 to 7 this week. He's starting to finish on a higher note. Here in November, obviously, and the Florida Gators have fallen flat on their face. I mean, the Gators played Georgia pretty much tooth and nail and had a chance to win that game. There was even a pass reception that the officials said Florida didn't catch it, but it looked like the film showed that it did. But Georgia, Georgia did not play their best game against Florida. Georgia still won 24-20. Now Florida's hit a new low with a 38 to 7 loss against Kentucky. Let's see, the Gators are 3-6 overall, 2-4 in the SEC. And my question is, who beating the desk? Who will Florida hire as their new Gator head football coach? What's your opinion? Please put them in the comments. Lane Kiffin apparently is everybody's top choice for Florida, for LSU, probably even for Auburn. And now the NFL has kind of crept into the picture. And I heard a rumor that the Miami Dolphins might be willing to let Lane Kiffin coach the team and maybe even be the GM. Is he going to go where the most money is? Probably. I think if you're in a situation like Lane Kiffin is, it's kind of like, what are your dreams? Do you ultimately want to coach in the NFL? Whatever your dreams are, Lane, you got to do it now. Probably do it now, because now, oh boy, now seems to be like the optimum time. There's no other year better for Lane Kiffin than to parlay his profession as a head coach into the most money that he's ever made, or he will ever make, possibly. According to a few people ever since Napier got fired, there's supposedly over 80 million, 81, 87 million, whatever the figure is, it's on the table for Lane Kiffin, as we've heard. Brian Kelly was a buyout of LSU, $54 million for the buyout. They haven't named their coach yet, but I believe they're after Kiffin. Florida's after Kiffin. Auburn fired Hugh Freeze like a week or so after Florida fired Napier, and LSU fired Brian Kelly. Hugh Freeze was fired. And Hugh Freeze did not have a good record at Auburn. I kept thinking from year to year, man, Hugh Freeze they're going to turn it on and have a good year, and it just never happened at Auburn. So now Kiffin is in the catbird seat. He can stay at Ole Miss. He can take the Florida job, the LSU job, the Auburn job, maybe even the Miami Dolphins job, which may have a caveat of maybe being the GM and the coach. So there's a lot of entities, franchises, college football programs that are going to give Lane Kiffin the keys to the kingdom, whether it's Florida, LSU, Auburn, or perhaps the Miami Dolphins. That's the latest rumors, we've been hearing. Where will Lane go? Well, he ultimately is not going to leave Ole Miss. Probably, I think he's there till the end of the regular season. And again, they could be a playoff team, and they probably will be a playoff team. Take a look at the top 5. And by the way, who will Florida hire as their new Gator head football coach? Please give us your opinion. Put them in the comments. And by the way, give us a thumbs up on the podcast episode show number 62, talking college football, Florida Gators, Jaguars. Here we are, right? And we appreciate you guys tuning in. We're brought to you by Saucer Realty and Capital for your real estate needs in North Florida. Larry Saucer's a big Gator fan. Larry and I talked about, and the one name that really came up with him and me was a guy named, and you know him, Kerwin Bell at Western Carolina. They did get beat by Mercer 49-47 on Saturday, November the 8th, but Mercer's got a really good football team in the Southern Conference, but so does Western Carolina. I think Kerwin Bell's probably the only coach that's won at Western Carolina. As a head coach, as a head college football coach, Kerwin Bell has won everywhere he's been. JU won a national championship, and I know they're not Division I, they're 2 or 3, I think, but Kerwin Bell won a national championship at Valdosta State. Now he's at Western Carolina. Western Carolina recently signed Kerwin to an extension, I think, through 2030. But do you know how much the guy makes a year? He would love to come to Florida. And you could get Kerwin Bell cheaper than you can get Kiffin or some of these others. Because I'm tired of all these crazy buyouts. Brian Kelly, $54 million. You're going to give Napier what? $20 million or more on a buyout? And then you got Kerwin Bell at Western Carolina. He was a Florida Gator quarterback in the late 80s. Western Carolina pays him about $200,000 a year. I think you hire Kerwin Bell at Florida, it could be magic. It could be magic. But they're not going to do that. He's a long shot. You know, the fan base, if they got behind Kerwin Bell, you might be surprised. Kiffin, going to be a lot of pressure. You know, at Ole Miss, in the Grove and all that, you know, Kiffin's had a lot of good seasons. He's been at near the top of the SEC for the past, however long he's been there, the last 5 or 6 years, I think. However, I've seen his teams run out of gas toward the end of the year. This is an interesting year for him in 2025 because going into the season, it looked like he had to replace a lot of people or a lot of players. He lost a lot of football players from last year's team. And now, what is he still winning? We got him in our, let's give you the, give me a minute here. We'll give you actually the, and we're glad to have you here on the Teal Shirt Report podcast, episode show number 62. Good to have you tuned in to the Teal Shirt Report podcast. I'm Scott, your host, episode show number 62. A little bit of the music there. We do have, by the way, the SEC, the BigJReport.com SEC Power Rankings, the top 5, and even some teams on the bubble. Let's give you those now on the screen. Big J Report Power Rankings, SEC Top 5 as of November the 9th of 2025. Texas A&M number 1 at 9-0. Alabama 2 at 8-1. Alabama's also undefeated in the conference. That's why they're at number 2. Alabama is 8-1 and 6-0 in the SEC. Meanwhile, Texas A&M just blew out Missouri at Missouri. It might have put an end to Drinkwitz being a contender at Florida, maybe. But he can go somewhere else. I don't know where he'll go. Drinkwitz may just stay at Missouri. He's done a good job there. They've had winning season after winning season. Missouri is not in our top 5 anymore, but they're 6-3 overall, but they're 2-3 in the SEC. Florida's 2-4 in the SEC. I think Drinkwitz might have shot himself in the foot with potential jobs after getting blown out by Texas A&M. And the game was played, as I understand it, in Missouri as well. So top 5 in the SEC Big J Report Power Rankings, SEC top 5 as of November the 9th of 2025. Texas A&M number 1 at 9-0. Alabama number 2 at 8-1. Ole Miss, we got them 3rd at 9-1. Georgia 4th. And Georgia did not play the greatest game against Florida, but they won the game. They did what they had to do to win the game. Georgia's 8-1. We got them 4th in the BigJReport.com SEC Power Rankings in the SEC Top 5. Georgia is 4th at 8-1. We got Texas 7-2 Texas is 7-2 at fifth. At number 5 in the SEC top 5, I've got Texas at 7-2. Texas is 4-1 in the conference. On the bubble, we got Vandy, Oklahoma, and Tennessee, and I think the bubble has burst for Missouri after getting blown out by Texas A&M at home. So those are the power rankings we got on the screen for a moment here. Now let's go back to the question, who will Florida hire as their new UF Gator head football coach? What's your opinion? Please put them in the comments. Is it Lane Kiffin? But, Kiffin's going to have like 4 different choices or so. He can go to LSU, Florida. Auburn would love to have him. And I think the Miami Dolphins, too. There's rumors linking Kiffin going to the NFL. It depends on 2 things. Probably the biggest thing is the money. The second thing, in my opinion, is what are really Lane Kiffin's dreams? What is his dream job? Does he want to go to Florida? Does he want to go to LSU? Does he want to go back to the NFL? It's been quite a long time since he coached in the NFL. Maybe he wants to conquer the NFL. But he's been at Ole Miss, and he's never won the SEC title. His teams have kind of run out of gas toward the end of the year. But in defense to Lane Kiffin, this year's been interesting. You look at where Ole Miss is. We've got him 3rd in the SEC at 9-1 overall and 5-1 in SEC play. Before the season started, Ole Miss did not get a lot of respect because I think Lane lost a lot of players from last year's team. So really, all in all, Lane Kiffin has had a good year. And I would say Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss have actually this year's team in 2025 may not be as good as last year's team or some of the other teams, but they have kind of exceeded their expectations. Ole Miss is 9-1 and 5-1. We're brought to you by Saucer Realty and Capital. Larry and I talked about, man, we would love to see Kerwin Bell come back to Florida, a guy that's making $200,000 right now at Western Carolina, but he's won every year. Or, I should say that's about a true statement. He's won almost every year as a head coach. He won at JU. He won a national championship at Valdosta State. And bear in mind, when we talk about Valdosta State, Hal Mumme was at Valdosta State. Then he got hired at Kentucky. You know who Hal Mumme's assistant was at Valdosta State? It was Mike Leach. That's a pretty good pipeline there. And Kerwin won a national championship at Valdosta State. He's gone. He's, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, but I think Kerwin Bell is probably the first guy to really win at Western Carolina. He got a contract extension. I think they gave him a contract extension through 2030, but bear in mind, this is a guy that makes about $200,000 a year at Western Carolina. So we got put the top 5 on there. Texas A&M, Alabama, Ole Miss, Georgia, and Texas are top 5. Vanderbilt, Oklahoma, and Tennessee on the bubble. Missouri kind of fell off the bubble as they kind of got blown out by Texas A&M at home. Florida got beat by Kentucky 38-7. Did Mark Stoops save his job or what? Beat Auburn 10-3 and now beat Florida 38-7 on Saturday night, November the 8th. Florida's at an all-time low. Somebody's going to have to pull out some huge money. I think the money's already there for Lane Kiffin if he decides to come to Florida, but he could go to LSU, could stay at Ole Miss, could go to Auburn, could go to Miami. Lane Kiffin is in the catbird seat. We're brought to you by Saucer Realty and Capital for your real estate needs in North Florida, whether it's home, residential, business, or commercial real estate. Saucer Realty and Capital. And what about the Mad Max Mix on Weebly.com? Leonard Skinner was on the stage. The guys that are in Leonard Skinner, which there's really no original members left. I'm thinking there might be one of the female background singers, the Honkettes. Maybe one of them are still living. I'd have to do some research on that. But the original members for Leonard Skinner pretty much all have passed on. Johnny Van Zandt has a big link to the band because his older brother was the original lead singer who died in the plane crash back in 77. But Leonard Skinner was at Daly's Place right next to Everbank Stadium. And they were actually a good show, too. Leonard Skinner was raising some money also for St. Michael soldiers. So a good cause. Could be their last appearance ever in Jacksonville. I know we heard that a few years ago when they played at Everbank Stadium, going back to 2, 3, 4 years ago. But they're carrying on the music. And there's a lot of music. Sweet Home Alabama. Guy Skinner's got a great catalogs, not just Sweet Home Alabama, but a lot of great tunes. Mad Max plays them on his show at the madmaxmix.weebly.com. Leonard Skinner's music lives on Max's Wednesday night show. What's that song? You got that right? Sure got that right. I like to hear Leonard Skinner, Steely Dan, Atlanta Rhythm Section. Max will play those Skinner songs from a great catalog, whether it's Sweet Home Alabama. I'm trying to think of that other song, but there's a lot of great songs, and Max will play them for you on Wednesday nights. JC the very next night, live from the pub on Thursday nights at LakeUpallahits.com. Great internet radio. I had to redo this podcast because we had some volume issues the first time we recorded the podcast earlier this morning. Beautiful weather in Jacksonville. Well, we started out with some fog on Sunday morning. Some clouds. Skies are going to be clearing, though. High today on Sunday, 85, and then it's going to get cold on Monday. Low temperature Monday morning around 49. And it's going to be warm today on Sunday, but cold on Monday. And the other song by Leonard Skinner that I really liked a lot, used to hear it down at the old Pizza Inn on the west side when we were in high school. What's Your Name? Great song by Leonard Skinner. I'm sure you've got your favorite too. I asked an old friend of mine, Big Bill, I said, what's your favorite Leonard Skinner song? I think he said Double Trouble. So Mad Max plays Skinner, Atlanta Rhythm Section, Steely Dan, many other great groups. I've heard him play Pink Floyd before, Steely Dan. He plays George Harrison. That's kind of his sign-off song. Oh, sweet Lord, right? So check out Mad Max at madmaxmix.weebly.com Wednesday nights, and JC the very next night live from the pub on Thursday nights. Both of these shows start at 6 o'clock Central Time, 7 o'clock Eastern Time, the madmaxmix.weebly.com on Wednesday nights, and JC's live from the pub show the very next night on Thursday nights on another entity, LakeUpallahits.com. Great internet radio where it's all good. So who will Florida hire as their new head football coach? There's been some other guys that have been mentioned. Jed Fish at Washington, but Jed Fish is only in his second year at Washington, and he has actually lost a few games this year. He's playing in a tough Big Ten. Look at all the teams in the Big Ten now: UCLA, USC, Nebraska, not to mention the charter members like Michigan and Ohio State, Minnesota. Jed Fish should be one of those guys that if he was offered the job, I believe he would come. He would come to Florida. Whoever gets hired is going to get big money, and obviously, Kerwin Bell is a long shot. Kerwin would get a substantial raise, but you could get Kerwin a little cheaper, obviously, than you could get Lane Kiffin. Jacksonville Jaguars won the game in Vegas by 1 point over the Raiders. It was an interesting game, too. Very, very interesting game from the standpoint. It's a low-scoring game, 6-3, like late in the second quarter, late in the first half. You're here on the Teal Shirt Report podcast. This is the Teal Shirt Report podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Episode show number 62, by the way. Again, we're brought to you by Saucer Realty and Capital. For your real estate needs, in North Florida, also by the MadMaxMix.weebly.com for Wednesday night request on internet radio, MadMaxMix.weebly.com. The JC's show live from the pub on Thursday nights, live from the pub at LakeViewFallOfHits.com. Great internet radio where it's all good. By the way, I will tell you this. We really thought the Jags-Raiders game was interesting. Man, it started out like a gut-wrenching game, 6-3 late in the second quarter going into the halftime. And then all of a sudden the team started scoring in the second half, and the Jaguars won 30-29. The field goal kicker hit a 68-yard field goal, which actually turned out to be, it's an NFL record now. It's a new NFL record, 68-yard field goal kicked by Jaguars kicker Cam Little, who the 3 weeks earlier was in actually a slump. He did kick a 70-yard field goal in preseason, but that's not the record because it was in preseason. But this time he got a 68-yard field goal, gave the Jags some momentum. Second half, the Jags offense played better. Got injuries going into the Houston game today, though. The Jaguars beat the Raiders 30-29. So really, some big things that happened, Trevor Lawrence rushed for, I think, 2 touchdowns, right, in this game. One toward the end, the winning touchdown. The Raiders went for 2 points in overtime as the Jaguars had a 1-point lead. Raiders went for the 2-point play. And I think Geno Smith, who I think is a pretty good quarterback now, he's gained a lot of experience over the years, but that last pass was a little bit low. And it kind of allowed Devon Hamilton to get a mid on it, or a hand on it, deflected the 2-point conversion. And the Jaguars won the game 30-29 over the Raiders in overtime. Keep in mind, it's a big difference from 5-3 to 4-4. What if the Jags lose that game by 1 point instead of winning by 1 point? Then you've got really a quagmire of people having a completely different feel about that Raiders game. The Houston Texans are 1-point favorite over the Jaguars today on November the 9th. Our source thinks the Houston Texans will win the game and cover the spread. Houston's a 1-point favorite. The game is in Houston, and Houston's favored because, heck, they're at home. Jaguars got injuries. Brian Thomas Jr. ankle injury is out of today's game. He will not play. Travis Hunter's already been injured. He's going to miss like a full month. So you got to have a guy step up like Parker Washington. Parker Washington is a guy that I said in the offseason before the season started, I think this guy can have a breakout year, and he's kind of headed in that direction. Today he's going to get more balls and an opportunity. The Jaguars also have, signed a new wide receiver. I say they've signed a new wide receiver. They moved some guys up from the practice squad, but they actually traded for the Raiders receiver. What's the guy's name? Jacoby. Let me pull up that info again. We get a new player. I have to get kind of used to saying their name. But good football player, to say the least. He's a guy that can catch the ball. He's a similar type player, say a Christian Kirk, who the Jags signed him a few years ago as a free agent. Injuries kind of derailed his time in Jacksonville, but he could catch the ball. He had a great first year with the Jaguars. Typically, Jacoby, the new wide receiver for the Jaguars, is probably a number 3 wide receiver, but today he's going to be a top 2 guy because you got Travis Hunter out, you got Brian Thomas Jr. out, and we're talking about Jacoby Myers. He seemed like he's happy to be in Duval. I heard a rumor the Steelers were trying to trade for him, but he kind of preferred coming to Jacksonville. What did the Jags trade? A 6th round and 4th round pick? I'm looking at the penalty. I didn't like to call. Ventrell Miller picked up a guy, and I guess they said he body slammed the player, and the Jags got a penalty on that play. Jacoby plays hard. ETN, apparently, I double-checked it with Marcus Medlock, and apparently ETN's mother, who had been ill for a while. I didn't know what the illness was, but she passed away, Etienne's mother. So that's a tough thing for Travis Etienne and his brother, who played at Florida and then at Georgia. Now he's in the NFL as well. So as far as the weather goes, man, I see sunshine out the window now at about 10:38 in the morning. The clouds have just about gone away. Sky is clearing out. We had fog really, really early this morning, but now it's going to be warm today, high 85. But late tonight, the cold air starts coming in. Late tonight and Monday morning with a low temperature in the morning of in the upper 40s, like around 48 or 49 here in Jacksonville in North Florida. Again, the Jaguars are actually, an underdog in this one. Houston is a 1-point favorite at home in Houston. Our source says Houston will win, cover the spread, and the total will go over. The total is not that many points. It's 38. The over-under is 38 in this game. The Houston Texans are 3-5. The Jacksonville Jaguars are 5-3. As far as concerts go to our website, bigjreport.com. Scroll the website, click on the Neighbors 2 section, scroll for the concerts in our area. Back to what we were talking about. Who will Florida hire as their next Gator football coach? Who will Florida hire as their new UF Gator head football coach? What's your opinion? Please put them in the comments. Will Lane Kiffin come to Florida, or will he go to LSU? Will he go to Auburn? He seems to be the top guy on everybody's list. It may come down to the money. What is Lane Kiffin's dream? Where does he want to go back to the NFL with a team like the Miami Dolphins? Heck, Nick Saban did that one time, and it didn't turn out as good. Where does Lane Kiffin go? If Lane Kiffin does not come to Florida, what's Florida's next move? Give me your opinion. I kind of like Kerwin Bell at Western Carolina. He's a former UF Gator quarterback. He's never been a head coach in Division I, but he's won everywhere he's went. JU won a national championship at Valdosta State, and to my knowledge, he's probably the only guy ever to win at Western Carolina. He got a new contract at Western Carolina. They've extended him now with another contract through 2030. But like I say, you do your research on Kerwin Bell, who was a great quarterback. There was one season he played quarterback at Florida. The Gators were 9-1-1 back in the day, back in the late 1980s. Kerwin Bell is a sentimental choice, in my opinion. Football is a game of momentum and emotion. And I don't think there's another guy that would want to be at Florida more than Kerwin Bell. Will Lane Kiffin come to Florida? He's a leading candidate. And we'll see what happens. Jags beat the Raiders 30-29 by 1 point last Sunday back on November the 2nd in Vegas. In overtime, Jaguars had a 7-point lead. The Raiders came down and scored, but then they decided to go for 2 points, to go for the kill, go for the win. And Geno Smith looks like he might have underthrew the pass a little bit on the 2-point play, and a really good deflection by a guy that I like, Devon Hamilton. When I've talked and not been kind to the defensive line, I've never really pointed out Devon Hamilton as a guy that is a problem. I know the Jags are going to need the pass rush against the Texans today. The receivers got to catch the ball. Parker Washington needs to have a good game. And will the newest Jaguar, Jacoby, will he be able to play? Has Jacoby consumed enough of the playbook? And being in Jacksonville, really a very, very short time now. He's a number 3 wide receiver, but I think today he'd be a number 2. And assuming he's healthy, I believe he is, he'll play. Does he know enough? They might have to keep it simple for Jacoby. We're talking about Jacoby Myers, who I think the Steelers were talking about trading for him. The Jaguars have traded a 4th-round pick and a 6th-round pick for Jacoby, the wide receiver, obviously, that the Jags have gotten from the Raiders. And obviously, they had a chance to see him. They just played the Raiders and just beat the Raiders 30-29. Check the concerts in the Neighbors 2 section at bigjreport.com. We keep up to date with weather, news, sports, more sports. And again, our big question, who will Florida hire as their new Gator head football coach? What's your opinion? Please put them in the comments. I want to thank all of our sponsors. The MadMaxMix.weebly.com on Wednesday nights. JC's show live from the pub on Thursday nights. Great shows, and we have links for these shows on our website at bigjreport.com. Salsa Realty and Capital. You know, Larry and I talked about Kerwin Bell. Kerwin is kind of originally from the Live Oak to Mayo area, in that area. He would be coming home. But Lane Kiffin's the guy in the catbird seat. And let's face it, Kerwin Bell's a long shot candidate. I don't like the buyouts. The $54 million buyouts is not good business. I know Gaylor told me it was apparently one oil tycoon that paid the whole thing off, or is paying the whole thing off, for the $54 million buyout for Brian Kelly, who got fired after 3.5 years at LSU. Napier got fired after 3.5 years at Florida. Napier's, I think, getting $20 million or a little over $20 million with his buyout. College football has changed. What do you dislike about college football? What do you like about it? Put it in the comments. And who will Florida end up hiring? And where will Lane Kiffin go? Put them in the comments. Give us, if not nothing else, give us a thumbs up and your comment on college football, the Gator coaching situation. The Jaguars are 5-3, but they're a 1-point underdog today in Houston. And our source actually likes Houston to cover the spread and to win the game. Jaguars need a pass rush today. They need the wide receivers catching the ball. Trevor's going to have to really play good football. The O-line and the D-line are key. We'll see what happens. Jaguars in Houston. Houston's a 1-point favorite in this game today on Sunday, November the 9th of 2025. Let's get to take a look at, we're taking a look at SEC football. The Jaguars. Skinnerd was at Daly's place last night on November the 8th. Skinnerd, what's left of the band, raising money for St. Michael soldiers. But let's face it, Skinnerd has such a great catalog. Songs like What's Your Name, Sweet Home Alabama, Free Bird. We can go on and on and on. And you can hear those songs. The music lives on with the MadMaxMix.weebly.com on Wednesday nights from 6 o'clock till 8 o'clock Central Time, 7 o'clock till 9 o'clock Eastern Time with the MadMaxMix.weebly.com on Wednesday nights. JC live from the pub on the very next night, Thursday nights, starting at 6 o'clock Central Time, 7 o'clock Eastern Time. And for your real estate needs, Salsa Realty and Capital, there's a link for Salsa Realty and Capital on our homepage near our North Florida weather information. Thank you for tuning into the Teal Shirt Report podcast. Give us your comments. Who will Florida hire as their new UF Gator head football coach? What's your opinion? Please put them in the comments. And we'll be back again real soon. Go Jags. The Florida Gators got to do something because the Gators are they're at a low right now. Florida 3-6 overall, 2-4 in SEC play. The BigJReport.com SEC Power Rankings. Let's put them up for you one more time before we go. Here's the SEC Power Rankings. Texas A&M number 1 at 9-0. Alabama number 2 at 8-1. Ole Miss 9-1 in the third position in our power rankings. Ole Miss is third at 9-1. Georgia fourth at 8-1, and Texas 7-2 at number 5 in the BigJReport.com SEC Power Rankings in the top 5. On the bubble after that, Vandy, Oklahoma, Tennessee, and Missouri's kind of dropping a little bit after getting blown out at home by Texas A&M. And who will Florida hire as their new Gator head football coach? Let me know. Any comments you got? The state of college football, let us know. You guys have a great day. This has been the Teal Shirt Report podcast, episode show number 62. Want to thank our sponsors, the MadMaxMix.weebly.com, Lake Eufaula Hits, and Saucer Realty and Capital. Special thank you to our executive producer, JC, also by Alex Nunnery. Alex, I know he's wanting Lane Kiffin, I believe. And if you want Lane Kiffin or you want another coach to be in Florida, or any comments about college football, the NFL, what have you, please leave them in the comments. You guys have a great day. Again, we want to thank our sponsors, as I did, the MadMaxMix.weebly.com, Saucer Realty and Capital, and Lake Eufaula Hits, the home of JC live from the pub on Thursday nights. And again, we're eloquently produced by JC, also by Alex Nunnery. And a special thank you to John Gaylor, our contributor and correspondent of the Teal Shirt Report podcast and BigJReport.com. I'm your host, Scott. Thank you for listening. I'm out. This has been episode show number 62. Hey, you guys have a great day. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening.